Hey everybody, my name is Anthony Vita with Real Broker here on Long Island, and today I'm going to walk you through the 3 different pricing strategies that we are using in today's market. It's basically going to cover what you can do in today's market to make sure that you're maximizing your value. We're going to go over the 3 different strategies, the similarities between them and the differences, and also a little bit about market knowledge and understanding how that relationship is going to flow into the best strategy for your home. So follow along in today's video and I'll share a little of our inside scoop of how we are making sure our sellers are getting the most out of their properties. Now, anytime that we sit down with a seller regarding their property and we're either working on timeline to figure this out or we're working on marketing, doesn't matter. The most exciting thing that everyone wants to talk about is how much their home can sell for. And in this video today, hopefully I'll clear up a couple of misconceptions for you. Number 1, it's not a broker's job to necessarily just pricing your home and give you fair market value for your home. Fair market value is only met when a buyer and a seller come to agreement on a price, right? So as brokers, we're not setting fair market value, or really we're not, and we shouldn't be setting how much the property is worth, okay? So our job as brokers is to help explain the different pricing strategies that is gonna help sellers get the most out of their home. And at the end of the day, our job is to maximize the sale price and protect a homeowner's equity. And that is always our goal whenever I'm sitting down with the seller. Now, what our process looks like to do that, depending on the property and where it's located and the comparables available, that's gonna change in each situation depending on the seller's needs and the specific property. And a good broker should be able to break that down so a seller has a good understanding of the different strategies in their market and what's going to work. Now, the final decision on the best strategy to pick is ultimately going to be the seller's. Now, let's walk through the 3 different strategies that as a seller you can choose from. The first thing that we're gonna look at is event pricing, right? This was very, very popular during COVID times, or 2020, 2021, in that area right after, when interest rates were very low and the market was rising heavily and there was a ton of buyers in the market. So that was a great time to use event pricing, for example. Now, event pricing is if you're saying comparable properties are selling around this number, similar location, similar size, condition. If we list a little bit less than that, it creates an auction-like environment, which will increase activity, increase the number of offers you have on the home, and drive up the price, ideally past perceived market value. So that's the first thing you're gonna do, which is event pricing. Now, the second strategy that you can look at is perceived market value. Again, as brokers, we do not set market value. It's a common misconception, right? So perceived market value is if I'd sit down with a seller and we're reviewing their property, we're gonna work on together. At our brokerage, we create a full CMA report, of course, really analyzing the relationship between actives, pending, and sold listings in the area that are comparable to that house. And then we can help come in with a 1 to 2% value, usually around a number of 1 to 2% that is going to come up with perceived market value. So if you were going to do the perceived market value strategy, by looking at the market, you say, okay, this house sold for a little less, this sold for a little bit more, around this, let's say $900,000 mark. We're gonna list right around that $900,000 mark because based on the properties that are selling, that's gonna be in line with perceived market value. Now, a big kicker on this that I speak to a lot of different sellers about is perceived market value, or market value to one buyer versus another buyer, can be a very different number. That's why we're calling it perceived. I give the example of, if my client has a brother who lives next door and their dream was to always, live next door to their brother, or they want to be close to family, or mom watches their kids and they're on the same street, market value to them is likely going to be a lot higher than Tom, who just likes the area and wants to be in Suffolk. So that's kind of how we have to do that. Now, perceived market value should keep you in range to get the right activity, and the broker that you work with should have proper marketing there to make sure that you're getting that activity. But that's gonna be strategy number 2. It's understanding perceived market value and listing right around that range. Now, the third strategy that a seller can use in this market is gonna be aspirational pricing. In other words, listing slightly above where comparable properties in the market are selling today. Now, this was very popular in a market that might be a buyer's market, where there's more homes for sale than buyer demand at that time. And if you look at market trends, for example, if you're seeing that properties are likely, for the most part, selling for, let's say, 2 to 4% below their asking price, then it might be a good idea to do a aspirational pricing strategy and give yourself a little bit of room. Now, with any of these strategies, the first thing that you've got to do is really look at market dynamics and get a good understanding, and any good broker should know this, of what's going on in the market with active pendings and sold listings. And if you understand how buyers are looking at properties and what their process is and how buyer agents are coaching them through, that's also going to help dictate the best strategy here. But at the end of the day, if you're going to use aspirational pricing, there should be a good reason for it, especially in today's market as we enter 2026, where we're still in a seller's market, right? There's more buyer demand than there are homes available. Prices are rising, and the inventory is low. Because of that, if you're going to do aspirational pricing, you've got to understand that buyers are expecting to pay your list price right now. If you look at a list price to sale price ratio, for example, you're going to be sitting for most towns around that 99 to 101% mark, and some towns even 103, 104% of list price above the list price, right? So if you're going to do a different strategy or give yourself a little bit of room, you just have to understand that you might not have as much activity, or at least there needs to be another reason for it. I'll give you an example that sometimes we do include this, or we do recommend this strategy. If the home is very unique, so if it's not your cookie cutter house for the area on a similar property size, bedrooms, whatever, let's say it's a very unique home, has really one unique style. If it's a very, for example, like a 1970s chalet, very Tuscany vibe, and has a lot of stonework and quirks to it, things like that, you might want to implement this strategy where you're starting a little bit higher. Only because you might not get the activity that a standard 2.5 colonial is going to have in that area. So because the activity might be less, your days on market might be a little bit longer, and you may want to give yourself a little bit more room for negotiation. Again, our goal as brokers is to protect your equity and maximize your sale value, the sale number. So at the end of the day, which strategy you're going to use really should be relevant to your home, your market, and the specific market dynamics happening at that time. Well, thank you so much for watching today's video about pricing strategies. I was excited to make this video because there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to pricing, and I really want sellers to understand that you don't want to pick a broker just because they tell you the highest price. You really have to understand what's going on in your market and really get to work on what strategy is going to be the best for you to accomplish your goals, protect your equity, and maximize your sale price. So hopefully today's video, this is a little quick, sneak peek of what pricing strategies could look like and how we kind of look at this process. So if you have any questions and you're thinking about what strategy is going to be best for your home, of course you can comment strategy below and I'll be happy to shoot back a response just with some market dynamics so you can see what's going on. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Anthony with Real Broker, and I appreciate you watching.